everyone, welcome to Invisible Not Broken. I am really excited about this because I tend to get to hear some of the best musicians on this show. I think that maybe chronic illness is sort of a thing that most of us creatives get together on, and I have a new favorite musician to listen to, so I am really happy about this interview. So we're going to talk to Jordan Plotner, and he has an amazing project called the Resonance Project. We're going to talk about that. I would also like to talk to you, since you are so multifaceted, from musician to, am I actually reading this right, that you developed a medical device?
Yeah.
Yes? Yeah. Okay, we'll get to that too, because I am mind blown today. So if you could talk to us a little bit about like who you are, what you've been doing, and what you have. And we're going to have a trailer for your project if you go directly over to invisible.notbroken.com. Our show notes are going to be full of all Jordan's things, so if you want to be a part of Resonance Project, learn about it, big button right at the top that you can just click on.
Well, thank you for the intro. And to start off, my mind tends to go in lots of different places at once, and I lose my thinking quite quickly and easily. So
we're gonna have a fun interview.
And so I'll work at it. But yeah, so I am a composer and writer primarily, and I kind of spent my life moving around all over. Most of my life spent living in England, but I live in Los Angeles now. And I write music for movies and TV shows, commercials, and also I write musicals and stories and poetry and all sorts of things. And let's see, what else? I also like tinkering with things, like building things. And so it ranges from desks and bookshelves to medical devices and things. So I get easily excited about projects and just kind of roll with them. Oftentimes I don't have the practical. I'm not thinking logically in terms of when I should start on something new. That's way over my head, but I'll get there eventually.
I love that you say that, because I feel like that's a thing for a lot of us, where it's like, I have all these ideas, there's all these things I want to do, and then it's a question of, do I have the energy for it? Do I have the tools for it? Once I get the tools for it, will I have the energy to finish it? Or my house is full of like half-done projects, so I completely hear you.
Exactly, and that's the sort of thing, especially in recent years, it seems to be as my health had gotten worse, I started getting more ideas, but I was less able to act on them. So I kind of had this list of things that, like, oh, once I'm able to do stuff, do that. And then I kind of had this growing list of things that I'm falling behind. Not falling behind because there's no reason to do any of them besides I want to do them. But I'm also working on a series of kind of essay, memoirish type things about the past 4 years, about kind of the intense health stuff, but how it's led me to reflect in certain ways on my life, my childhood, my future kind of identity and things. And so I've probably got about 12 beginnings. And because I was just writing until I lost the energy, and sometimes that was 10 minutes, and sometimes that was, if I was lucky, an hour. Usually not an hour, but usually more towards 5-10 minutes. But one day I'll get back to that. Not sure when, can't make any promises, but one day.
Well, in this interview, maybe we can help you, like, just structuring it through like the essay form, because we're going to start with, this is pretty new for you, which is surprising to me. A lot of us with Ehlers-Danlos, and that's what you have with Chiari malformation, is that right?
Yeah.
A lot of us had like symptoms like from super early on, and like we're really sick kids, but it sounds like this was a sudden thing. Am I reading that wrong?
Yeah, so it was, I guess I'll separate into two stages. We had for phase 1 of misdiagnosed growing pains.
Oh, let's start there. That's my favorite place to start.
Yeah, and so that was I really began, I guess, at age 12, 11. And so certain things that in hindsight now know, oh, that was EDS. But back in the day, it was growing pains. What's a growing pain? I don't really know. But yeah, this was definitely a growing pain. And so it ranged from knees and elbows and shoulders and exercise-induced asthma. That wasn't even growing pain, but that was just something else that was probably a puberty thing. Who knows, right? And so none of those things were really real. I mean, they were real in the sense that they were very painful and prevented me from doing things, but there was no real diagnosis or treatment. I had these big hulking knee braces that I used to wear on middle school basketball team.
Oh, that must have been easy to deal with in middle school.
It was hilarious. Not hilarious. It was a little funny just because, like, who's this middle schooler with these huge knee braces on? Like, is he an old man? Maybe. Maybe, because I also have gray hair. And so at an early age, so I was like, who is this small child with gray hair and huge knee braces? That's me. And so that was phase one. But it's interesting. Going through phase one's a little different from reflecting on it because, kind of in middle school and around that time, sports were my favorite things. I played 3 seasons, and it was, if you had asked me, I probably wouldn't have been coherent enough to talk about my identity at that time, but my identity would have been grounded more in sports and being an athlete. And that all took a turn when I couldn't really do that. And so I guess beginning of high school is when my knees would just start giving out, and so I wasn't able to play soccer, basketball. I played baseball just because there's less running. Until I couldn't really throw, and so played first base. And then, but that also, kind of the time that I spent playing sports, I was now able to devote to music. And I was kind of at that time where I started taking music more seriously, and started practicing more and participating in other ensembles and orchestras. And so that's kind of when my music, I was like, oh, this is something I like, and I can do this. And so that was, I guess that's the summary of phase one. Phase
so I'm kind of curious though, because like, yeah. I've done this for like I think almost 2 years now, and it seems like all of us who were sick as kids, who actually had like physical limitations when we were growing up, even though we tried to do things, once we realized that wasn't necessarily that possible, a lot of us seem to turn to creative pursuits. And I find that really interesting. Really? Yeah, and it's even just not even people I've interviewed, but just people I've known, like car accidents. Anyone who has like a limitation as a kid tends to go really interior. And I'm just kind of wondering how that worked for you, like socially, how your friends were, how your family was through like high school and junior high. Did you have support? Were doctors, is like, I know from my experience, like doctors were telling my parents I was insane and that there's like no way that this was a physical thing. So I was curious if you got the same like feedback from doctors and family.
Yeah, so number one, family was incredibly supportive and always there for me. And in terms of other kind of social, before I get into the medical side, so my brother is 3 years older than me, and has kind of been a superstar at everything in life. And so he was a senior when I was a freshman in high school, and he was kind of the celebrity of the school and was the best athlete and kind of the star. We'd have the weekly Friday night basketball games. The whole school would gather around and watch and cheer him on, and it was great. I mean, at that point I was in the pep band, so I was playing loudly, banging on the drums. But it was definitely tough because and we're really close, and so there was never kind of competition between us, but it was more of other people would say, "Oh, you're just kind of the less good version of your." In some words, it was kind of like yeah, all different iterations of that. And so that was tough in terms of trying to reassess who I was given these limitations, which they're still nebulous limitations that I didn't really know what they were. But I knew that there was something that was not working quite right. But again, family was very supportive, and if my brother had been anyone besides the incredible person he is, then it would have been much harder. But luckily, he is who he is. And so, friends, I mean, social life changing kind of on the whole at that point anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So early high school, and I guess this is the first time I'm thinking about it now in this context, but early high school was my aspiring beat poet phase. And when I became the angsty jazz snob and was reading it on the road and had Howl.
Oh my God. You are speaking my language.
Yeah, I was a snob. Now. But I was the sort of thing where I'd be invited to parties, and so I'd go to them, but I would sit in the corner and just be like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. And then just like silently just be in my head, which is great, which is always what you want in a 10th grader. And so that was productive. But then I'm trying to think. I think at that time it was easier to accept medically what was going on because I had accepted the fact that I wasn't going to be playing these sports, and given that, like, my knees weren't really that important in playing bass or playing guitar. Like, they were just kind of chilling there. And so, yeah, I would experience pain, but it didn't, in my mind, there was all sorts of other stuff going on, so I didn't really devote my energy to thinking about that in a sort of way of how can we fix this. It was just kind of like that's growing pains, I'll grow out of it, doesn't really matter now, suck it up, sort of thing.
It's just interesting how our life choices when we're sick, it doesn't even seem like it's something we necessarily make consciously. It's just like, oh, so this isn't really happening for me over here. And like, even as kids, we start like pushing away from things just because our bodies aren't doing it. And then we just sort of like fall in on things that we think we can do. It ends up like really defining what most of us end up choosing to do for a living or what we study.
Yeah. And I've also found it fascinating. I've been thinking about this actually in the past few days. Where I have a habit of when I start feeling badly, I will I will like refuse to sit down, or I will refuse to lie down, or if I know that if I lie on my little pinky ball, my exercise ball, I know 100 times out of 100 I will feel better after that. But some part of me still now, when I'm feeling badly, I will not do it because I think part of me is fearful of if I get down, I won't be able to get back up. And I think a lot of that stems or is rooted back in kind of the early middle school days a number of things, but playing sports where it was very much in the mentality of if I'm hurt, push through it and fight through it. If something, and just kind of dealing with it and moving on and keep going forward, and kind of this notion of progress. Been through shit, but we're gonna still get there. And so I think that's ultimately I think there have been some positive things come out of that because I'm able to, when I'm anxious and stressed, I overwork, so I end up coming up with things. But on the flip side, it's not quite. I'd imagine it's slightly detrimental to my health. So yeah. So I'm trying to be more aware of that and mindful of that in the present.
So how do you do that? I'm totally not asking for advice here. How do you do that?
No, that's a great question. Actually, I got a new. I'm a sucker for little gadgets and little things, and so I just got a new. This is not an endorsement, or I mean, it's not an official endorsement. I'm not being paid by this company.
None of us are getting paid for this, by the way. No one on this podcast gets paid.
Okay. It is a Garmin, what is it? Garmin Vivo Smart 4 or something. It's like a Fitbit type thing, but usually people wear Fitbits, I think, when they want to exercise. And like, how many steps, how many miles am I running? I'm not running any miles. But this, one thing I saw about this that I like is, one, it's regulating heart rate, but also sleep patterns and kind of oxygen levels in your blood and these sorts of things. So, and it's kind of aggregating all these to give you some sort of numerical representation of your current body battery level. So it's like in a computer, like your battery is 50% full. Like, you should go to sleep for a little bit. So it has this sort of equivalent where it's like your body, it needs to be recharged. Like, take a break, lie down, go for a walk. And so it gives you, I mean, I've only had it for a day, so I don't really know. And it's told me to go. It's been telling me a lot of things. Go for a walk, lie down, take a break. I'm currently at 30% battery life for me. I haven't gotten above 34 yet, so we'll see. I'm optimistic. And it also monitors all your different phases of sleep and different sleep cycles. So I think I got something like, it was almost 9 hours of sleep, but it was like, you had 1 good hour of sleep. I was like, nice.
Good. What, 1 hour? That was well done, sir.
Well done.
So for oh my goodness, that's brain fog that just set in so fast. I had a question and it just like, I was like, yeah, that's cute. You thought you were going to actually ask something. Yeah, gone. Done.
Sorry.
For, you have Ehlers-Danlos and the cherry, do you also have POTS?
So I'm operating under the assumption that I likely do have POTS. I had a tilt table test when my symptoms my phase 2 symptoms, which was a spinal leak, my sophomore year in college. And so...
Could you take a minute and just explain, as I don't think if you have not had a spinal fluid leak, you understand what that's like. Can you explain what joy that is?
Yes. Okay. I'll set the scene. It is a Sunday night. I am, I think it's in March or April. Weather's just become beautiful. Great news. And I'm sitting down just in a chair, not doing anything, chatting with friends, and suddenly a wave of fog just creeps up and just kind of smothers my brain. And at first I was like, what just happened? And I thought maybe I was dehydrated or something, so I went and chugged a lot of Gatorade and then went to sleep, and then woke up next morning and couldn't be upright. And it was the most horrible pain I've ever experienced. And if I wanted to be upright, I'd have to literally hold my head up. And I just felt I'm one for using obscure analogies, and so if it makes sense, roll with it. If it doesn't, also roll with it. But I was describing it as kind of my brain was like a paper mache construction in which there's the balloon, and then there's all the paper mache on the outside around the balloon. But the balloon's expanding, and the paper mache is like shrinking. So everything is fighting the pressure inward and outward, but everything is conflicting and feels like it's about to both simultaneously explode and implode. A fascinating feeling. And so I went to it was my girlfriend was like, you should go see a doctor. And I was like, that's probably a good idea. And so I wandered over to the health services where they recommended I go to mental health, and which yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Crippling logical, cognitive, and neck pain. Go see mental health. And so I kind of pushed them on that. And I was trying to basically say I need an MRI. Like, please get me an MRI. I don't know, and you don't know what's happening there. But then they that didn't happen. So then I kind of went to see another doctor in New York. And basically, this is the start of seeing lots of doctors, not having answers. But it was one of these early doctor's appointments that I had actually, no, this would have been a few months later, a tilt table test for POTS, which is a miserable experience. But they said the diagnosis is if you faint, you have POTS.
Do you want to explain what a tilt table test actually is? There's probably some people out there who are Ehlers-Danlos is super underdiagnosed. So there's a lot of people who are sick without doing all this.
So imagine this is the first thing that popped into my head is like when they were designing Frankenstein or any of those like lab monsters, and they strap them into a table, and then they kind of you can kind of rise up. So you're lying on the table and it's flat, and then it goes up slowly, so Frankenstein is upright but still strapped into the table. And then if like Scooby-Doo and Shaggy kind of get in there and make a mess of everything, and they click the lever so that the table is automatically going up and down and up and down and up and down, and Frankenstein's freaking out, and that's a tilt table test.
Can I just tell you how much I adore talking to you, going from like Ginsberg, Howl to Scooby-Doo? I'm digging this. That's fantastic. A quick word on tilt table test. If you have a mental health condition or anxiety, or you have claustrophobia, you might get a false positive because it is terrifying. Yeah.
It is. It is.
Control freakness, it will all just completely, yeah.
Oh, and also you have, or at least I did at the time, had needles in my arm for, I don't even know what that was for. Something. It was for something.
Why not?
And this was and so, anyway, I didn't pass out. I was very close to fainting, but I didn't faint. So they're like, you're free, no POTS. I was like, oh, great, that's good news. And so I moved on. But in hindsight, I've realized that maybe that's not how. Maybe there is still a chance. Because I kind of have all the symptoms. Because there was also the period where I'd have these head rushes that was sometimes, when you get up too fast from, or for those who don't have POTS or similar things, when you get up too fast after you're lying on the couch and like, whoa, head rush. And it's usually like a split second or a second. So I would have those that would last for like 30 seconds. And it's a weird thing because I'm standing there and just and people are around me like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, just one sec. Just wait. I'll get there.
I'm sorry to laugh, but I spent my whole teen years with everyone thinking I was high and on drugs because it was like that all the time. And I was like, no, I don't actually do drugs. Like, trust me, I don't need to.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a very worse feeling.
Yeah. And so that's an unpleasant feeling. But also one thing that you had mentioned before, when you had said like brain fog, I forgot what I was going to say. And that happens very frequently with me as well. But another element of that kind of sometimes it was like I'd lose a train of thought. Then sometimes I would know what I was going to say and go to speak, and the words just wouldn't come out. And I had post-surgery, that hasn't happened, thankfully. But before surgery, it was a strange thing because I knew what I was going to say. I knew what I wanted to say. It's not that I couldn't vocalize. It was just that like I could make sounds, but it was just, there was a huge, it was like an internet lag. Like, okay, internet's down again, the brain's down again. It's going to be a second before the words come out. But it could be 5-10 seconds before a word came out, and I didn't know what was happening. That was a good time. Yeah.
I'm stealing the internet lag as brain function. That it's going to be a part of my vocabulary from now on.
Yeah, it's a good one.
It's like not quite locked in feeling where people have the locked in sensation where they can hear and everything's going on, but it feels fairly similar to that sometimes.
Yeah, and also like pixelate. Everything becomes, if the internet's connection is a little bad, everything becomes pixelated. And it's like, okay, I see you're a person with a face. I can't see what your face is. Everything's just pixelated. We'll roll with that.
Okay, so do you get it where you, like, English first language and someone's speaking English to you and it suddenly feels like you can't associate the words to their meanings anymore? Or is that just my own weird thing? You should probably see a doctor for.
Different iterations of that, where sometimes I'll hear a word and be like, that's not English. That's a made-up word. And it's like very much not a made-up word, and it's a very real word that it's a very basic vocabulary, and like, that doesn't sound right. Or then I'll be going to say things and it's like, is this a word? It's often words with double letters. I don't know. I can't think of an example now, but like, that sounds funny. Like, I don't know.
So you're a person who actually like lives in the world, I'm assuming takes meetings for your music. How do you set yourself up so that you can do a meeting? Yeah,
so this is just for setting the scene a little. I've been in LA 2 years with an asterisk. So I've just come back to LA after I've been in LA now 3 weeks after having been gone for a year. And where I was back east in Connecticut with my family, where I was kind of pre-surgery, surgery, and recovery. And at that time, I had it was also the sort of thing. Given that I'm a freelance composer, which is not in itself not the most stable of jobs, and trying to make it as a composer, as an artist, requires a lot of perseverance and a lot of intense work. And because it's the artistic side of things, but it's also like starting a company, because you have to form relationships and connections and meet people, and leads often might, you think they're going to happen, but then they end up fizzling out. And so just trying to learn this terrain, and then add chronic illness on top of it, and it really complicates matters. And so the last year I was, or I guess my first year in LA, was when health stuff was no bueno, and I was still trying to, this is my first year in the real world, trying to make it, and there was a very much a balancing act.
I'm sorry, you guys, please keep talking. If you are watching this on YouTube, you'll notice me getting up, but if the panting is not a porno phone call, that is my pug, who is not enjoying the heat, so I'm just going to put her outside. If you could keep talking, that'd be great, but she is extra today.
And so it's definitely difficult, given that I have no idea what was going to happen 10 minutes, and then the next 20 minutes, the next hour, day, week, how I'd be feeling, if I'd be able to work on a project. And I've never...
So how did you handle that with clients? Like, were you upfront about health issues, or were you just burning the candle at both ends, trying to light the middle?
That's the one.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that one.
Yeah, so I was not upfront with anyone. In work-wise. In my own head, I was trying to separate personal from business, but it's all. Who are we kidding? It's all one thing.
But we do make an awfully good run at that.
Yeah. People are like, "You're really good at." I've learned recently, like, "You're really good at faking it." I would never have known. I'm like, I know. Thank you.
Decades of experience doing that.
Yeah. I'm horrible as an actor. Would never want to be acting in a movie or anything. But this, I can act. I can do this. I had to really tap into my 4th grade Pied Piper acting chops to channel that.
If you want to post video, we can put it up on the show notes.
Oh no, I don't even know. So I remember there were a few moments that were just kind of epic in their oh my god, all of this is really happening right now. Because there was one day I guess it was when I was in LA before surgery, and again, health-wise was not doing so hot, and was having all sorts of health insurance issues with my health insurance provider because they had misfiled the paperwork, and so that had kind of set I kind of delayed my whole getting insurance thing, so I was having to pay for everything out of pocket, which is also great. Anyone starting out in freelance composing, try to avoid any insurance, get everything out of pocket, pay for everything out of pocket. It really does wonders to business life.
So a quick little note for our international audience. If you have not listened to the podcast before and heard me on my soapbox, I will not stand on soapbox today. I'm too tired. But we are in the United States, and we do not have socialized medicine here, even close. And if you are doing anything on your own, like a composer or I was a photographer, we have to pay for our insurance out of pocket, which I think I was paying $1,000 a month when I was paying, that eyebrow raise, and that was through a thing. But most of us who have full insurance either get it through our parents until we're 26, or we get it through working 40-hour-week jobs from a company that is big enough to provide that. So that's just my little aside for all of our international audience who are like, but why was insurance expensive? So it can be up to $1,000 a month if you're paying out of pocket.
And so it was a combination of that, and then needing to pay for all of my medications out of pocket as well. And so there was a day when it all kind of came together where I, health-wise, baseline was not doing so great. I was having 2 days worth of withdrawal symptoms from the medication that I wasn't able to get refilled because I was waiting for the insurance company. I had just come back from a funeral for an old friend, and right as I got out of the funeral, I had a client needing a commercial within 4 hours, and so I was like, "Hey, this is it." And so that's one of the moments that it just kind of all came together, and it was like, okay, this is it, this is life, and then pushed through. But since then, I mean, post surgery, it's been much easier. I mean, post surgery, granted, I've been recovering for 5 months or so, and have been that's been a challenge in itself. But now that I'm kind of one step closer to normalcy, at least given my craniocervical situation, I'm more trust in my own sustained energy levels, and that I'm able to not go a whole day necessarily, but I know that if I go to a meeting, I'll be fine throughout that if I caffeinate, and and so I'm less concerned about that. And but it was definitely a challenge, because when I was right before surgery, I was doing work up until the day before surgery, and started work maybe maybe a month after, in just little bits, because I also wanted to ensure, I know that there are all sorts of things that impact my own health and well-being, any sort of stressors, any sort of business or financial or career things, which if I could avoid those, or if I could kind of improve my chances of avoiding those sorts of stressors, would be better for my long-term health. So trying to kind of lay the groundwork even when I was recovering, and right after surgery and right before surgery, so that when I'd go back into normal society, it would be more of a seamless integration, and that would kind of continue to improve my own health. But yeah, you got to be thinking about lots of things at a time, and definitely a challenge. But yeah, my dad once, when I was younger, apologized, because he was the one who really got me into writing songs and writing in a notebook and writing down my ideas. And he apologized to me once for never being an abusive father. And I was like, what? And he's like, I feel like all the best songwriters always have abusive fathers. And they gave something to write about, and I've never given you that opportunity. I'm like, I think we're okay with that, Dad. But
you got the disorders, so you've got...
I got the disorders, so that gives me plenty to write about and plenty to think about.
That is a new way of looking at things, since there's always that adage that art comes from pain, and it's... I don't know, see if I can actually form a proper sentence. Do you tend to feel like that's your escape from all of this, the creative process, or is that...
I would have answered definitely yes at an earlier time. The reason I'm hesitating now is because it's all kind of a big mumble jumble. And because I know that's a very articulate way of describing it, because music is now passion, hobby, self-expression, career, business, sustenance, it's all linked together. And so I kind of have difficulty now separating things in my life in that regard. So I think that...
So whenever I start talking over Jordan, it's because we're having buffering issues on Skype. I swear I'm not being rude. You're back now, though, so that's good.
Okay, back. In terms, I'll take from the reflexive approach that whenever I'm anxious, it is likely because I am not doing something creative. And so, I mean, there are other roots of anxieties as well. But when I have an idea or something, or when I have something, and even if it's not hasn't coalesced in my mind as an idea, but is just kind of the things coming together, and if I don't have a chance, or don't have the energy or the time or the space to work on that, or to kind of let that out, it will kind of fester. And so always want to avoid the festering.
It is the general rule in life, I think, avoiding festering is helpful. And so I find that having some sort of catharsis, or some sort of writing, or whether music, words, painting, photography, etc., so having some sort of outlet has helped me immensely. And I think that there is also this period of time post-surgery has
and like immediately pre-surgery, I've read more than I've ever read in my life, and I think I've grown as a thinker more than I ever have, and I've kind of been pushing myself to learn about different ways of thinking about the world and fiction and nonfiction and medical books and all sorts of stuff in between. But one of the and I started keeping in my notebook a list of quotes that I read and that I enjoyed, and would kind of just read through those if I was feeling down or if I was not feeling as good. And I found that after reading those, I would kind of go back into a mindset of thinking creatively about life, and would often feel better. But there was one great passage, and I'm going to butcher it, but I think it was, I'm going to sound kind of pretentious, so I apologize. It was either Nietzsche or Rilke, but it was like write from a place of urgency, right where, and in the sense that only tell, I'm really butchering it now, only tell stories that you need to tell, and where if you can't tell them, then you can't go on. The sort of thing where every story, everything you do, there should be an urgency, and there should be I need to do this. I need to put everything in this in order to go on. I need to tell this story because it is vital to me. And so I've been trying to think about that as I go forward in my creative life, in my life in general, and in my writing, think about, okay, there are infinite stories to be told, but there's only one I can be working on at a time. So why do I need to tell this story now? What do I need to, am I okay if I don't tell this story now? And if the answer is yes, then find something else. Because as a result of that, it's going to be the most personal, passionate, and important stories, at least to me, and hopefully the idea is that would resonate elsewhere.
So is that where the Resonance Project came from?
A good transition, actually.
Thank you.
I didn't.
I thought you were setting me up for that.
It crossed my mind, but then I realized it wasn't actually deliberate. But the Resonance Project actually comes in some form, because the idea is that for anyone who knows music or physics of music and sound, you can skip this section, but just a little overview. So if you were to play a single note on a piano, a single note on a violin. Okay, we're going to bow a string on a violin. What you're actually hearing is not just a single note, but a note, what's called a fundamental frequency, and then a whole series of pitches that are rising above it. And so the order of those pitches and kind of the emphasis and the volume of each of those pitches is what determines the string's character. And so that makes you say, oh, that's a violin, or oh, that's a trumpet. And so you're always hearing all of these notes, but they're all jam-packed together, so you can't actually tell them apart from each other. It just seems like you're playing a single note. And so that's called a string's harmonic series. And so what the idea here is that if you have a violin and the violin doesn't have a body, which would be quite sad, and you're just bowing the string, the violin's going to make a sound that's going to be quite quiet because it's just the string vibrating. You won't really be able to hear anything. But when you have the body, when you have that, the idea is that the frequencies, the harmonic frequencies in the string will kind of tap into all of those same matching frequencies that are in the body of the violin and in the air. And so as a result, it will kind of find all of the matching frequencies that are like itself, and then they'll all start making noise. And that's how the whole body vibrates and resonates, and that's what creates the sound from the violin. So in one step back, in a simpler way, it's like if you walk into a room of strangers wearing all sorts of different colored shirts, and you're wearing a purple shirt, and it's like walking in, and everyone wearing purple shirts is like, oh, it's you, purple shirt dude. And everyone goes together, and suddenly you have this whole big group of purple shirt people that you didn't know before you walked in. And so the analogy that I'm making to chronic illness is that living the day-to-day life with chronic illness has a harmonic series of its own, in the sense that there is the kind of what you see in the calendar. There's the logistical, I go here, I go there, I do this, I do that. But there's all sorts of hidden elements and hidden layers and details and things that you're thinking about and to be aware of in your daily life that are often invisible to everyone else. And it's what forms you as a person, and it's invisible. And so, but the thing is that in the violin analogy, that's just like the lonely, the vibrating string. And the idea is to find the body for that so that it can sing out and so that it's no longer hidden. And so the idea is there that once with one person's harmonic series of pain and chronic illness and all of these complexities of life and intricacies, if you can kind of share those and they resonate in another person. Like I'm saying, I'm describing these things of my day-to-day life to you, and for some of these you said, oh yeah, I have the same thing, that makes sense. The idea is that having all sorts of people that would hear those things, be like, oh, I didn't know someone else felt that way. Oh, someone else, oh, that, no way, I didn't know that. I thought that was just me. So I'm not crazy. And having kind of a whole, having all of that emerge from a mass, and the idea is that it would resonate kind of the truth of the complexities of life with chronic illness. That's the overall, sorry, I rambled.
No, not at all. I think you should definitely, if you don't want to do anything else, like just going into teaching musical theory is a very good option there.
Thank you. And so in logistical, or yeah, I guess what the project actually is, I began about a month prior to surgery filming myself with a GoPro. It was this little camera, and I would take it with me everywhere. And I would just kind of narrate my life and have chat with myself into the camera. And this ranged from, I remember there was once when I was in the car and I was going to a coffee shop, and I was talking about how there's all sorts of great moments of tension and like weird social interactions in a coffee shop with eye contact, about when you look at someone, when they look back at you, if you're looking at them to try, but you don't think they're looking back at you, but then they look at you. There's all sorts of things. So I was kind of rambling in a Seinfeldian manner about that. And then also there are times when I'm really slumped out and lying on the couch and can barely move, and like I feel quite badly. And then as we go into surgery, the moments leading up to surgery, I use it as a little spy cam. So I kind of hid it in my bag so that I could be walking around the hospital without having an obvious camera. and I tried to get the surgery itself filmed, but my claim was rejected, and I wrote an appeal letter, but that too was rejected. It was a shame. But anyway, then I filmed. I gave instructions to my family to. I know you won't want to film me while I'm in this fragile state, and while your parents feeling vulnerable and caring for your post-surgical child, but please film me. And so they listened, and so I've got lots of footage in the hospital and then kind of the whole road to recovery. And so it's basically 5 months of 5-6 months of daily life footage, which I'm now working to edit down into something a little more consumable, let's say. And so the idea is that, and then the latter half of the footage, as kind of interwoven with the recovery process, is the process step by step of me writing this piece of music, Resonance, which is kind of my way of processing and dealing with everything I've been through and the idea of chronic illness and of genetic anomalies. And so I kind of, it's a whole step-by-step process of how I make it. So every time I would go out with my notebook to write, I would be filming my notebook, which I can assure you is lots of hours of garbage. But I mean, I've captured the moments that every new line was written and every note was written. And similarly at the piano, when I'd be sitting there writing out chicken scratch on the staff paper, a lot of garbage there. But I mean, I've also captured the whole process of composing the piece of music. So it's my job to edit it now so it seems less garbage. So the idea is that this was my path, my story, my own harmonic series, and by sharing it with the world, hopefully it will resonate with others, and will kind of from that spring more general awareness of EDS and chronic illness and kind of the hidden elements of people who live these lives, multifaceted lives. And so the end of the project, the end of the film, and will be a performance of this piece, Resonance, and it will be performed by a virtual ensemble, so a virtual choir and orchestra comprised of musicians living around the world with chronic illness and disability. And so I posted the music and all the different parts online on my website, and have kind of included guide tracks. And so I'm asking people, musicians, singers with chronic, musicians are singers are musicians, but just players and singers. Don't want to offend any singers. You are great musicians.
Please do not send an email to me on this one. Go to his website. You can send that over there.
And so basically record a video of oneself performing the parts, your individual part in the song, and then you'll send it in to me and I'll edit it all together and make kind of an orchestral collage. And that will be the piece.
And when do you need those submissions by?
I put on my website mid-September. If you can get them to me at that time, great. I know that's not likely going to happen, so the date is flexible. But
okay.
But send in when you can.
Okay, we'll try to get this out in early to mid-September. We will do our best to push this episode forward.
But there's no pressure. Whenever you can get it.
That is wonderful. Do you have anything else that we did not cover? Because I will completely kidnap you and keep you on this episode for as long as possible. We're getting close to an hour, and I don't want to take up your whole day. Do you have anything that we did not cover or that you wanted to push forward?
I guess the one thing to add is that I realize that I'm So it took me from the time I really started looking, when symptoms became really serious, to diagnosis was about 4 years or so. And that seemed like a long time, and it was. 4 years is a long time. But I had read online that the average EDS diagnosis is something like 18 or 19 years, which is horrifying. And so whenever I feel that 4 years was a long time, I think about, okay, think 18 or 19, but also I am living alone. I don't have to support a family. I have people around me who care for me. If I had to support a family, and if I didn't have anyone else to be there for me, there wouldn't be time to spend doing all of these, kind of going on what might be like a wild goose chase in search of something. And so I'm aware of that, and sending strength and good vibes, good perseverance vibes to all those going through this or in search of a diagnosis. But I urge everyone to be as knowledgeable as possible going into doctor's appointments, and be as you are in control of your body, and you need to be in control of the knowledge of your body as well. And obviously a doctor went to medical school, so they've got a little bit of a leg up on you. But it's really helpful to know as much as possible so that you can go back and forth and ask specific questions and be clear in what you want and your issues and concerns with doctors, because I found too often I've been kicked out of the room way too quickly. Even if I think if I've done my research going in, I know what I want to ask, I kind of go through all my questions and they're all dismissed, and then I'm shooed out, and before I can even realize it, I'm like, wait, that just happened. I prepared for that. Oh man. And so it's inevitably going to happen, but trying to be as knowledgeable as possible will save you great time and pain.
I don't know about you, but I have pretty much white coat amnesia anxiety disorder. So the second I see that white coat, I like shut down and go into like an absolute panic attack and can't think. So I just want to add one more thing to that, is that if you think you have a disorder, going onto, and I'm not the biggest fan of Facebook, but if you go onto Facebook, there's always groups for those disorders, and asking people, what would you ask the doctor? And getting a list of questions from people who have been diagnosed from that before can be really a lifesaver when you're going in and all of a sudden you're like, I don't even remember my own name. I don't remember what my symptoms are. Never mind. I don't know what I'm doing here. Goodbye. Like, it can really help to just have a notebook where you have like these questions listed. So that's my advice for the day. So we are still having buffering on Skype. I love Skype.
Sorry.
We've got to find a better alternative here. We tried Zoom and it didn't go any better. So unless I'm going to get some major like funds into this podcast, I can fly to meet people. We're just going to have to deal. So if you can, go over to Jordan's website. If you go to our show notes, it is a very large button at the very top. I hope Jordan's okay with this, but I did put a link to his music right underneath because that will be my playlist while I'm doing my writing. I'm almost at the end of the book, so it's good to have a new playlist for that book. I appreciate having that now. Is there anything that we did not cover that you wanted to scooch in?
I don't think so. I think we're thorough. We covered sound, so I think happy about that.
Well, I hope you come back on when you're ready to release your project, especially if you just want to come back on. We do panels all the time with people where they come back on to talk about a specific issue. If you want to come back on and talk about getting a project together with chronic illness and how you're able to do that, I would love to have you back on. This was a lot of fun for me. I mean, anyone who can quote Nietzsche and the Beat Poets and then go to Scooby-Doo, I had a blast talking with you. That was so much fun.
Appreciate it.
English literature major, and I have no one to talk to about any of it, so it's really fun. So yeah, please head over to our show notes. That's the best place to go is invisiblenotbroken.com. And if you want to be nice to us, the best thing to do is still go over to Apple Podcasts, leave us reviews. I do read them, I promise. Even the other ones that I don't love reading, I still read all of them, and I do take all of the advice. I try at least. So thank you for all of that. And I think we'll just end this with the tagline, which is be kind, be gentle, and be a badass. You can do it.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Anytime. I hope you come back.